Guys, what's up? This is my client Joseph. He was generous enough to hop on a call with me today to talk about his experience working together. So what's good, man?
Oh, a lot of things are good, but is this a philosophical question? No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, sweet. So let's just walk through, I guess, the timeline of us working together over the last 3 months. Like, where were you when, first of all, how did you find out about me and what I do? And then where were you in life before we started working together?
Yeah, I found out about you on TikTok actually, and you were talking about video games and video game addiction, and I was like,
Uh,
this is kind of interesting. And you had mentioned something about, I think, like just life as a video game, like living life like it's a video game, and I was like, that's pretty cool. And so I looked into it a little further and your stuff on Instagram, and I was like, okay, that's cool. But yeah, around that time, I was doing a lot of in like spiritual-ish work, or like just mindset kind of stuff, figuring out how to like what would the next thing in my life be. And I just thought, oh man, what sucks is that it seems like right now I don't have a plan of where I want to go. I don't really have any desire specifically on where I want to go. I have a vague idea of where I'd like to be, but I have not even a fraction of like nerve to do anything about it. Like zero at all. And life looked like, oh yeah, I'm comfortable. I'm doing okay for myself. I'm not like, screwed or
yeah,
just
you got stuff going for you. Like
yeah, like
you have a
yeah,
good
like
job.
comfortable.
For the
Yeah, very
people at
comfortable.
home, like you're married, you have a kid, like you're not down and out, right?
Right, exactly. So I mean, it wasn't bad by any stretch, but it was also where I'm like, okay, I don't have zest about life, and I don't have any direction about where I want to go either, and I don't have confidence about being able to take any sort of
Yeah.
next steps. So that's how things were for sure.
Is that a place that you were in kind of before encountering my content, or was the seed planted and then over the course of a couple weeks, like it germinated? Like how did that go?
So the main thing was just the idea that there's been an issue that I had for a long part of my life, which is around how would I create the path to achieving any sort of dream.
Hmm.
And like I would set goals for myself, and just along the path of things that would come to me, and I would work with that. But in terms of actually setting anything up for myself, where I'm like, that's beyond the normal scope of just what I'm given, and just kind of working within that and within a comfortable space. There wasn't any there wasn't any clarity about how to work outside of that, and it just felt like, okay, I need to like something. Luck just needs to fall on my lap.
Right.
Basically, was the way it looked. And you were saying instead, no, like life's a video game. You can play like if you hone in on this like it's a video game, then you can start treating it in a way where you're going to level up and going to be creating a life for yourself. And I'm going, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I've played video games before, like a good bit, not like to any like massive like crazy
Right.
amount where it was like highly disruptive. Though I did have a point in my life where it was kind of like that.
Uh-huh. So when
But
you jumped in, then like you weren't in the throes of video game addiction or anything. You're not even gaming right now, right? Or you weren't.
no, I really not. But what I did notice is that I was wasting a lot of time with endlessly scrolling on TikTok, or accumulating random knowledge on just a whim. So there wasn't anything behind that, and the problem wasn't the randomness of it. The problem that was happening was I was getting really glum, and I didn't feel any
Yeah.
sort of purpose and any zeal about life. When I would just have free time, I would just burn through it and not have any joy that would really come from it.
How long had that been going on, and what had you tried to address it with that
Yeah.
still works?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, honestly, I didn't really have much that I did to try to address it. I tried addressing it with one distraction versus another. I used to be really into video games. I didn't play 12 hours a day, but I play 4 or 5 hours a day. I would go around. I would scroll on TikTok. I would, just any sort of thing internet wise, media consumption, and even at some point, just filling up the time with, hanging out too. So none of it really seemed like it was a problem. It just seemed like I was in one phase of life versus another, and having free time. It just was consistently happening where I would just burn through it.
Yeah.
So it was happening for a long time, and there wasn't really a way to gain focus and make that time really, really satisfying.
Yeah, but you said you didn't really realize or consider it as a problem. What made you flip that switch in your mind?
I kept hitting a spot like continuously over, going, into my free time where I would get consistently this feeling of dread, this feeling of anxiety, almost this feeling of and this was actually in the past. It was even stronger, where I was like, I'm not doing anything like with my life. Like I didn't have any sort of like remote amount of success when this stuff was really kicking in. So it was to the point where it was very painful, because I'm like, I could be doing something with my life, but I'm not, or I don't even have a way to do anything with my life now, and it was just endless like torment in that way. But as of recent and in years, like even like the past decade, it would just show up on occasion. And when I say on occasion, I mean like once a week or every few times a day, that kind of thing. Like it wouldn't be super long, but it would be enough where it's like, this seems to be just a normal low. It just seems to be like a thing where life is kind of just dragging you down, and you can just put it out of your mind. Forget about it. You got an okay life. You're good. But it became more obvious that it was a problem when the notion of this is your dreams around life and how to get there are completely, it's disconnected. Your time right now you could be using to build that, and without that and knowing, having any sort of direction on what to do, it was like, shit, okay, I need some help here.
Right.
Maybe I can reframe my use of time, reframe how I'm approaching life, and that will gain traction to where I'm actually making use of my time, where I can be in a more happy state of what I'm doing for myself.
No, and it took a bit, because you're 34 right now, right?
Yeah.
Did that add to the urgency or the fire in your butt?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it was. It's to the point of like, okay, I know that I could have been kicking this off in my early 20s for sure, no question. Absolutely no question about it. All the resources that I needed have been available for well over a decade, and so even my studies related to the topics of things that I would like to share or contribute in have been around, and have been things that I've been looking into for a long time. So the fact is that, yeah, this has been well overdue.
Okay, yeah. Nothing changes if nothing changes, type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons why the change was not happening was wasn't so much fear, but it kind of was. It was around, what is it going to take from me in order to show up to this where is worthwhile. And one of the things that kept me there was the notion that if I show up to it, just take a swing at it, then boom, it's just going to knock it out of the park. And it's like, no, that doesn't.
Right.
One feedback like that doesn't mean the end all be all of whether or not you're on the right path in life. And that's a huge thing I've learned.
That definitely, I think, halts a lot of people in their tracks, because they meet the first inkling of resistance and immediately like freak out and throw the towel in.
Yeah, and the crazy part is it's also how you frame it. It's not necessarily that things are resistance, it's that it just might not be meeting your expectations of how it needs to go.
Exactly.
So,
Expectation is a key word. And I think that's really illustrative what you just described as well, because, if you just wait around hoping that the problem will kind of resolve itself, you keep putting it out of mind, or just saying, oh no, like I have time, or this will work out eventually, I'll figure it out, but like you don't actually do anything about it. It just keeps coming back, yeah?
Yeah, exactly, and that's pretty much the case. So I had my own things in life where I would do, have organic growth career wise, work, on myself to grow emotionally, things like that. But I wouldn't see within my spare time, like, how am I going to connect the dots here? I don't have any direction for all this extra time here when I do
Yeah.
have free time, and it just would be like, ugh,
How
what is this?
how is that affecting the other areas of your life? I
You're
guess your
saying
confidence.
that feeling, or you're
Yeah, I
saying
mean,
the
yeah, and the fact that this was like a lingering, gnawing problem for a while. I mean, like your confidence, I guess your home life, how present you were to everything else going on. How is it affecting everything else?
it actually affected me in ways that I was quite surprised to unearth, and I wasn't aware of it until actually speaking with you on it. But I realized over time of observing and leaning into it that it actually had led me to be more passive, very hesitant to engage people in a form of confrontation around things that were bothering me. It had caused me to, and we're really talking about not just the feeling here. We're talking about the symptom. These are symptoms of that problem of not allocating energy in an effective way.
Sure.
So the other way in which that was in showing up in my life was not paying attention to myself on where I get an idea and jumping into it. So it led to being more just kind of down at times, very flat in affect, not depressed, not like down, but enough to where it was like there's no spark here, there's no planning, there's no excitement, and that permeated pretty much every aspect of my life and my time. So there wasn't really much there really wasn't any hope, much anything to do with the fact that it's like, okay, I'm living my life on other people's
Yeah.
terms, and it's like, shit. Now I'm realizing, really, like, as that started to kick in, it really became more apparent of like, holy shit, okay, this is my life, and I can take action here.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of unfolding in the process, and seeing that affected a lot of things, and one of the biggest changes that I noticed is that by flexing that, addressing the things that were bothering me, it started to like come out in the form of maybe a little bit more aggression than I was comfortable with. It wasn't like life disrupting, but it did throw me off a bit to exercise that. And then eventually started to notice that I was actually getting more peace in my life. Not just because I was more peaceful and happy, but because I saw the feedback coming from other people, feeling a greater connection with people.
Yeah. No, you teach other people how to treat you, and a lot of people get hung up, I think, on tapping into parts of themselves that they're not comfortable owning, and at their detriment, and they think that it's going to be a big deal, and then they start actually standing up for themselves and what they care about and what their values are, and they get surprised at how it's almost like you garner more respect because it's like, okay, you're actually taking a stand for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was curious as well. When you were considering jumping in, what concerns did you have, if any? What hesitations? What doubts? Was the age difference? Because like I'm turning 27 next month, so you got like 7 years on me. Was that a cause for any concern? And like, so then, what were all those doubts? And then, what ultimately made you pull the trigger?
Yeah, no, honestly, it was kind of funny is that I did have some doubts. I think that I was like, okay, yeah, this guy is he's definitely a bro. He's got this air about him that's a little different. But the funny part is I also one of the things that really broke through that for me was understanding that you're very well spoken. You have a very clear case of what you're pitching. You have your own success for yourself. You've done it. And me looking at that going like, well, shit, I haven't done that. I can learn from somebody who's younger instead of them being out of touch and having, just wanting to, take my money and, just throw me through a standard process. What you've presented to me was, hey, this is stuff that I've gone through in one form or the other, and I've worked through this, and I'm going to walk you through that. And I'm going, holy shit, like I've talked to a lot of people about these sort of things, and they just pass it off under the rug. They're not people that I would particularly wish to be like as well. And I've realized that you got that energy, that zest about life, and I'm going, okay, what's he having? Let me figure that out. So eventually, that was really the breaking point for me to pull the trigger, was realizing, yeah, I've been dealing with this problem almost all my life, and it's not going to go away. And you got that solution. Let's hear you out. And you already kind of gave path of understanding that playing life as a game is a way to go about doing that, and owning it, And so that really helped. And so yeah, I was like, okay. Let's go with that.
Cool. Yep. And so then walk us through the transformation over the 3 months, who you were back then versus who you are now, and everything that happened in between.
So I mean, the main focus that had brought me on, actually, we solved rather quick, and I was very happy with that. I think we solved it within about 3 sessions, actually. And it was around direction in life. It was, what is it? Where do where's your calling? All this kind of stuff. And it's like, no. You tune into yourself, and then as you do that, as that kind of stuff is pulling at you, that's the reason why you're experiencing the pain to begin with, is you're not paying attention to yourself. So tune into that and cultivate that, and that works. It's been working. It always works. It's a it's a yes or a no. Did I show up to life or did I not? And did I show up to it enough for me? And so that we solved that one very, very quickly. From then on, it was really about looking into the ebb and flow of life, the things that would put me on a path of being able to take decisive action and create, to look within myself, to research, to go out of my comfort zone, whether it be reaching out to people, starting up a conversation just to have a conversation, going and walking, doing some push-ups, just all that kind of stuff was like the essence of you training me to cultivate, to stoke my own fire, as you say, to give me a source of energy to go and do the thing that I want to do. And so we focused a shit ton on that, because continuously there was a desire to just go back into distraction mode, go back on autopilot, don't pay attention to yourself, just ignore the pain, ignore the sparks, so let those imaginative sparks dwindle out. All that kind of stuff was the real battle, was getting to where it's like, at times facing yourself is really fucking uncomfortable. It's really scary. And then going out and then speaking to it, or reaching out to people, or even pressing and looking for the answer, and not just going with the one Google search and then just throwing it out when you don't get the answer, but pressing continuously.
Or not just taking an idea that we talked about and being like, okay, cool, and then going back to life as normal, but like actually executing on it.
Exactly. So having that toolkit there, and I know I've been harping on that so much, but like I can't emphasize enough about how much living a distracted life had been damaging and keeping me from achieving anything.
Of course,
really,
man.
That I wanted to achieve.
It's not actually living. It's literally zombifying yourself so that you can just not go fucking batshit crazy from everything that you're avoiding. So
exactly.
To your point, about the comfort zone really figured heavily, I think, into our work together. There were definitely times, especially in the beginning, like you said, we kind of solved these things relatively quickly, but then consistently like acting on them, or I guess keeping that as the new normal, became tough at times. Like triggers would happen, stuff would come up. What was that like every time that you'd hit, I don't know, a place of resistance, or something coming back to bite you in the butt?
Well, yeah, I can't. Again, and this is like, I think the biggest benefit of why the coaching was why I really needed it is, and it's twofold. Is the first one is that having the answer and then getting the answer is one thing, but letting it sink in and accepting it for yourself, there was this back and forth that we had to have in order for it to really click, in order for me to acknowledge that there was some pain there in resisting the truth of what you were saying. And so that was the first part of letting that resistance go and then taking new action. And then following through with that new action, because consistently that dragging would show up in the form of, oh, what about this? What about this in life? What about, connection with God? What about, and I would use the answers as a means of holding me back. Like, that's the crazy part. I would analyze the hell out of, well, what's the best method of going about this? How do I, receive that inspiration? How can I cultivate my inspiration the best? Just all of this sort of thing, instead of just like, take the elements you're working with and work them.
Do you feel like I did a good job of, I don't know, calling you out on your own shit and
You had called me out multiple times over multiple weeks until eventually there was it was almost like a breakthrough point of realizing that you weren't saying it because you wanted to turn me into you. It wasn't about me becoming like you. It was about you noticing that I kept hitting the wall and just being completely just confused and miserable because of it. And once I realized you were saying this really for my own good, and you're like, hey, look, you keep hitting the wall here, go and focus for real. I know that that's not comfortable for you, but go through it anyway. You already know from just a small test here that this is what works for you. Go ahead and do it. And I realized that the funny part is that the discomfort started to go away.
Yeah.
It started to get easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been pretty wild. Pretty wild. What else did you get out of this? I mean, like, what other aspects of the transformation did you find the most valuable that have had like a really tangible, noticeable impact or like a visible effect on your life?
So you and I have talked a little bit about work and balancing things from an emotional perspective a good bit, and about life also, where I would lose something like I would misplace something like my wallet, and getting that, having reactions to that, having reactions in the day, and getting a spot where I would process things externally. I would show things externally where I'm calm and collected, I'm not, but inside I'm burning, I'm seething from it. You and I worked on that. You and I worked on that a little bit, not as a main focus, but we did improve on it a good bit, where I could notice, hang on a second, other people's reactions here, that's really them, and I'm not to internalize that so much. And so it was about thickening. I pretty much thickened my skin a little bit more there when things wouldn't go as planned, or having expectations for myself and beating myself up. Like, those things we did work on, and where it was like, hang on a second, like, no, you're setting the goalpost here as well. You're setting your own timeline, and your reaction to not meeting your own expectations here showing up, and other people putting their expectations on you. It all became just a management of, what am I setting out for myself? What other people are setting up for me? And realizing that, I started to notice that, hang on a second, if people are putting the pressure on me, I can say, haha, and then just, be defiant in a way and just go ahead and kick ass. Or another way is, nope, that's you. That's not my problem. And being able to do that without having to internalize it and get stressed and just completely, scatterbrained and lacking focus about the things that matter to me. I think that's really where it connects back to me focusing on myself, and so as it relates to other people, we focused on that a good bit.
Not being a slave to your reactions, because you're technically not free as long as someone else has that power over you.
Well, there was that too, and that also was part of cultivating more of the impetus for me to take control over my own life. Yeah.
Dude, where do you think you'd be? What would life look like if you hadn't joined? Like, how do you feel
Oh,
thinking
I
about
would have.
that or imagining that
Oh,
scenario?
yeah. I'm actually the answer to that is actually real. It's way easier than I thought it would be. Um, I know for a fact that had I not talked with you, I would have way more instances of that problem building up. I would be putting it off, denying it that it existed. Probably would have drank a good bit more, quite frankly. I don't know for a fact, but
I
I'm
have a
guessing
hunch.
that there would be consumption patterns too. There would be various other ways of distraction
Yeah.
to numb myself to it. And would have I probably would have been living really sad. It would have kicked up, especially with the winter months.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, not being able to go out and have as much physical activity. That stuff would have really hit me harder. The other thing that would have happened, and this is probably even more impactful than that, is that, but it's more short term, is that when it comes to career and family life, stresses would have gotten to me a lot more, where that anger would have been cultivating, pushed down, and then me being a victim to life
Right.
and going woe is me, and then feeling stuck and helpless instead of being able to take action, respond to it, and speak to how things are affecting me. And by doing that versus the other situation, I've been able to feel a lot less weight on my
A lot more
shoulders, for
powerful.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, a hell of a lot more. I mean, it's incredible because at this point now, the way I see how other people are responding to me or bringing things to my attention, I realize it's coming from a place of their needs. It's not coming from a place of their inherent knowledge of like this is the right thing that me, Joe,
Right.
have to do right now, and I have to meet that bar right then and
Yeah.
there. And that lens of processing is completely different. It turns things from being red hot and wearing me out to something where it's like, okay, let's see what we can do here,
Sure.
and actually end up showing up better for it as well.
100%. Yeah, showing up to your life more resourcefully. Something I've noticed a lot within you. Not, throwing your hands up and being like poo poo, rainy day.
Yeah, and that's how it would have been, and you saw that actually in the starting
Yeah.
phases of it, is that I was just like, fuck it,
Yeah.
I hate this, and eventually talking through it, we got to this point where it was like, no, hang on, no, don't look at it through that
Hmm.
lens. Step up to what you want to step up to here, and embrace it with
Yeah.
intensity. And before I knew it, it was like, oh,
I'm s- I'm
actually I
stronger than
can.
I realized, right? Yeah.
Very much so, and it's not just about strength. It also is the fact that, and actually, this maybe should have mentioned this earlier, is that having the discipline to just bite the bullet and move on with learning something or producing something,
Sure.
it's so much easier than the dread, the procrastination that comes from the feeling of putting it off. And so I was not really a procrastinator, like at all, but I realized here that the things that I was actually procrastinating on were the things that mattered most to
Right.
me. Not things that other people could tell me something to do and I'd go right for it. But when it comes to dealing with here,
Yeah.
yeah, I was putting
That's
that
such an
a lot.
interesting like phenomenon of you're there at the drop of a hat for everyone but yourself, and
Yeah,
then you're
absolutely,
wondering why,
absolutely.
like, you feel like a bit, lack of confidence or beside yourself. It's like, well, brother, you're not showing up for you.
Yeah, it's funny is that confidence actually was a topic that I had a lot of resistance towards, because it came up with errors that you had to have. But as I've learned more about what confidence is, it's just being comfortable in your own skin. And the fact is that if you're not paying attention to yourself and the things that you desire, you're gonna feel
Yeah.
discomfort. And so that, I think,
Yeah.
tuning into that has
If you're
made
not
life a
living
lot
true to
easier.
yourself, and to your point, being able to work on yourself and see where you can grow without making it like an indictment of your self-worth that sends you into like a spiral or a low until you can kind of like recover from it, I think has been really huge as well.
Yeah, I think I this topic we had hammered on almost every session. Almost every session we hammered on in one way because I kept resisting the fact of pursuing something because I was like, well, once I get there, I'm going to be chasing after something else. Until you pointed out the fact that no, you focusing on yourself and creating all these are steps where you become more of you. You become a different person. This transformation that happens within you is the goal. It's not the treats at the end. And I started realizing that every step that I was taking was, in fact, satisfying. It helped me get to sleep better. It helped me to be happier around people and have more zeal and not just be like, yeah, I mean, you could see the difference between how I would show up to talking with you about life and going like, yeah, it's okay, kind of thing, to like, hey, yeah, no, actually, I was up to this, and there's a lot more energy around life now because of
For
it.
sure. Playing the game is the reward, yeah, and who you become. No one can take that away
Big time.
from you. How do you feel like our work together kind of changed the way that you view the world and just the trajectory of your life versus what it would have been otherwise?
So I was essentially resigned to just muddling along and not setting anything for myself. That's where I was. I was not bent on any sort of particular goal. Maybe something potentially would have me work at some point where I would feel like forced or backed into a corner to specifically put out some energy here or there. But that's where things were, and now I can see the trajectory is a lot different. Where I can see that just now, even I'm showing up to learning new things. I'm showing up to creating whenever I'd like to create. Whenever I get a glimpse of inspiration, however wacky I would have previously judged it, I'm just gonna go and frickin' rip it, as you say. And yeah, it's just that kind of thing I can see it is already paying dividends in the form of having intensity and having that attention that comes to those inklings is it alone creating even without the results in this trajectory of, hey, a brighter future, better jobs, promotions, owning a business, all those kind of things that people dream of. Even without that, living day to day where I'm showing up for myself is already a heck of a
That's
lot
the
better.
reward. I mean, being able, that's such a huge point because obviously, like anything in life is going to take time. It's going to take surfing all kinds of highs and lows, and you got to be in it to win it, like for the long haul. And so the fact that you're able to not just like tolerate the journey and the daily reps and everything, but like actually enjoy it and see it like as an end in itself, and appreciate it, independent of whatever results are manifesting right now. I think that's really huge.
It is. We did a good job with covering the lows a good bit,
Which is most of the
and
work, right? Like,
insulating against the low, being able to pick yourself up when you get knocked down. Because in my case, I had lulls where it was like, no, I don't know, I don't want to create, I don't know it, and then all of a sudden there becomes a spiral, just like on your process map of like self-sabotage, and it just circles and circles and circles. It's going back into distraction, and it's like, no, like the way to approach that is to let that just be, and then literally force yourself back up and say like, hey, this is what
yeah,
I'm showing up for. And so pressing on with that through the low and lifting yourself out of it, us talking through that multiple times had helped rewire me to
yeah,
where I'm able to recognize when I'm going into a distraction mode or going into a lull, and not turning it into an existential
right.
crisis, not turning it into something that is a doubt around what my path and what my intentions truly
Sure.
are. And so that helps cultivate more consistency. And by releasing that, it's actually made my production of various creative things, as well as having energy to show up to life, it's made it better quite
Right.
significantly.
Dude, have you gotten compliments from other people? Like, have other people noticed these changes within you and like said something to you about it?
So I think that what's into this is one of I think that people have noticed that I'm showing up where there's more confidence. That is one of the things that I think people
Good.
have seen. I haven't gotten um, I haven't gotten compliments where they're like, "Yeah, you're so zealous now. You got all this kind of thing, or you're showing up really differently." Because
Yeah.
I wasn't showing up in a way that was
Sure.
bad inherently around other people. But what I have noticed is that the kind of compliments that I've gotten are I've been able to receive them.
Mm.
Before, I couldn't receive a compliment where, and mind you, I would still say thank you. People would give me a compliment, I'd say thank you, but I couldn't feel their sincerity. I couldn't perceive it because it was so blocked off. And now, when I hear a compliment from people, I do actually feel their admiration
Sure.
and love.
You're allowing yourself to. You're not, pushing it away out of self-judgment.
And so I may actually be receiving more compliments than I was, because there's the verbal side that's
Sure.
going, okay, well, I wasn't like really tallying it. But now, in terms of how I experience people's
Has your fam
compliments and
Yeah, has your
experience,
family said anything? Has your wife been like, it's cool to see you this way?
um, actually, actually, she noticed the changes that we were putting on at first, and she was like, "Hang on now, what is this? Why are you doing this?" She was actually looking into it, where it was like, that's not
Mm.
you. So she actually had her own way of looking at it, where it was like, these changes might not be the thing that you really want to do. The funny part, though, with it, though, was after putting in that effort and then showing up in a way where I was able to integrate my feelings truly, I did notice that she wanted to plan more things with me. She wanted to, um, yeah, she wanted to connect more. We had more to talk about. We had more things that we were creating in common with each other, and so there were naturally, I think, rather than dealing with any sort of like where I would have the discomfort or the shadow of this like existential
Mm.
dread. That's not something that you want to put in front of your partner. That's not some way you want to show up as a man to your, yeah. So because of that, that in itself was a thing that kept distance from me being able to receive that love and feel that love. And by ultimately breaking through and being more true to myself, it allowed me to articulate, and thus we've been able to connect more. It hasn't shown up in the form of like, "Oh, you're the greatest" or anything like that, because she always
Yeah.
thought I was. Okay? She really has, and we've been good regardless. But the difference here is that I can really tell now that the kind of things that were hovering over me, they don't have to be our problem anymore. I can be just attending to it in the form of paying attention to myself, and then from there, she gets more laughs. She likes the stuff I'm creating more because I am
Yeah.
creating more. And yeah, so I do get compliments in the form of what I create, and also probably has helped.
Yeah, dude.
Probably has helped other
That's
things too.
badass. That's super badass. Being able to show up better for your home life and also noticing how things were affecting, like how it was affecting things before that you kind of even weren't even aware of, but now you have the contrast and it's like, oh, like there was so much like I don't know room here. That's really really cool.
Yeah, I'll say this for anyone listening. If you're having problems that are lurking that's leading you to have avoidant behavior where you would not feel so inclined to connect with somebody, your partner or anyone else, if that's happening in your life, that sort of thing needs to be taken care of in order for you to show up for yourself and for other people. And with that, I can tell you with 100% certainty, by my process of working with Christian here, it has helped where I've been able to connect with people better.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. I had one or two more questions. I was gonna ask. Oh, do you feel, I don't know, based on what we laid out at the beginning of the program as a roadmap, all the objectives that we were gonna hit, the way that it was gonna go, do you feel like we delivered on that well, over delivered? Like, I don't know. Do you feel like it stayed true to what the plan was?
So we over delivered in terms of in the area, you had over delivered in terms of the area around this mental mapping, spiritual type journey, and that's what I went on board for. Okay, so absolutely. And then these other areas that we worked on were extra to begin with. So, but when we worked in those areas, in particular, I'd say that you did pretty good with it. I didn't have anything at the end of it where I was like, we didn't cross through there. I really, really wanted to.
Cool.
You know what I mean? It's just all that's left now for me is taking the tools that you've given me, implementing them, and reintegrating them into my life consistently to where I can say, okay, now I've actually, I realized there was a little fire, a little ember within me around something. Now we started to get it stoked and built it, and a couple of times before it even built up good, it had gotten knocked down a good bit, or down to the point where it was hardly recognizable. And realizing no, that thing is within you, this is what you're cultivating. We got to that point where I've learned that I'm just to focus
100%.
on that and keep.
You mentioned now all you have left to do is kind of just take what what we did and continue running with it. Do you feel like you're in a position now that we're not going to be working together every week to do that and to kind of be self-reliant and actually continue applying all this stuff?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely, 100%. And the reason for that is that I have my own form of self-accountability in the form of how do I feel when I go to sleep? How do I feel in the day? Am I getting those lulls or not? Because that's what I was showing up for to begin with. Am I getting that or not? And if I'm doing the right behavior, then that stuff isn't showing up. So absolutely got the tools there for it. Though I would say that should there be another type of thing that comes up or whatever, I know who to reach out to.
I just want to make sure you feel like you're in a position to not explode as soon as we stop having calls.
Oh no, not even close. The entire stuff where things would become dark because of it.
Excellent.
That's not happening. It literally it's not even possible because the roadmap is so clear.
Sweet, dude. Well, I guess any parting thoughts, any words of wisdom or stuff that you'd have to say to people who are considering joining the program and doing this kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say don't neglect yourself. Make sure that you understand that if you have a problem that comes from any form of addiction, honestly, but especially video game addiction, reach out to Christian because he knows the path through and a way to get you turned onto your own life where you're paying attention to yourself, where you can do value-driven behaviors, and those things will bring you more satisfaction than a distraction from the things that are bringing you down.
Gnarly.
100%.
Gnarly. Dude, thanks so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch. Talk to you soon. Let me know if anything crazy happens.
Of course.
All right, peace.
Thanks.